All right. Well, we have the time. We should do the talking. We'll figure it out. We're rolling. We'll start it from here. Welcome back. We got Teves again. There's been a lot going on, not only in hip hop but in the world. Teves, welcome.
Hello, hello. Thanks for having me again.
Of course, man. I mean, I feel like as soon as we hit upload or stop record, upload, a whirlwind of things happened in the time since.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah. But for all of those listening, we may or may not talk that much about hip hop. So we'll see what the title of this becomes as we continue the conversation.
Yep, I'm down for it. Let's go with the flow.
So Tevis and I have partnered on a project and it's about to drop as of this recording. It has yet to release, but when this recording is live, it will have been released. So I guess I just kind of want to recap that process. First of all, thank you very much for your willingness to want to collaborate. And second, you and I talked about this briefly, but being so far removed from when we originally did it, I was blown away revisiting it, months later.
Yeah, same. I think it was I underestimated the value in kind of like stepping away from something like that and then coming back to it with a fresh perspective and a little bit of a detachment from when the like I guess the production actually occurred. So it's cool to kind of like just be able to jump in there and play around with the footage that we captured and the talking points. Just like I said, with a fresh set of eyes and ears on it. So it's cool.
Yeah, one thing that was really interesting too in talking to Dylan and his mom about it, the one thing they kept telling me throughout the process was like, it'll be when it's ready in God's time. And then actually I had a meeting earlier today where we talked a lot about alignment, unrelated, but someone else in that same sphere. So it's really just a reminder to me too, the analogy that the seed will bear fruit when it does. And I think a lot of times in the journey, if you try to force something before it's ready, you just cannot do it. Like take cooking rice for example. If you want to hit that perfect blend, you got to just have like the right amount of water, the just the perfect cooking time. If you go too soon, it's not going to be ready. If you go too long, it's not going to be good. So it's just hitting that kind of like middle spot.
Yeah, that's the sweet spot, baby. But yeah, I gotta say, like when like right after we filmed it, I hacked away at it for probably about a month, and I was having a hard time kind of sculpting out maybe the vision that we went into it with. But yeah, I don't know. Coming back to it, it was just like it was easy to like extrapolate what I thought was like the most impactful part of it. I think.
And working on the project, it really did evolve. I think from the initial thought processes and ideation. But I gotta say, I feel like I learned a lot. We learned a lot, and in the future, there's different avenues that we can explore. And honestly, and maybe it just has to do with like the deeper sense of the story that was in there. I kind of think that it had to go the way that it did. And if you look at the timing of it too, I'd shared with you that I shared the video with someone who knows everyone, and it was, brought her, tears and joy, right? Sadness as well because of the loss. But I think we did the job. I remember working on a video project a couple years back, and the people that we worked with, they were saying anytime you can like move the interviewee or the audience to tears, then you've done really good work. And so I think really in what you cut from, and for those listening, it was a lot of video. So Tevis works some magic in being able to distill the essence of the deeper part of the story into sub 90 seconds. So if you listen to the full and then compare it and like look what you did, like, I mean, kudos to you, man. I think it's super awesome, and I think it worked out the way that it was meant to work out. So that's been something that I've really been trying to apply in my own creative practice, is stepping away and channeling into the next
Mm,
project.
yeah, I think I was saying this recently too when I was talking to you, but like I think creatively, like I've kind of really gone back to the basics. For me, like the fundamentals is like working with what I have, and that's like skills, equipment, you know, tangible, intangible, and just finishing each project right now. Like just checking it off
Yep.
my list. You know, just getting it done, and then moving forward, and then rinsing and repeating. You know, and then iterating, learning what didn't go well, what could have went better, what did go well. You know, celebrating the small victories, so on and so forth. But that's kind of like my creative philosophy in a nutshell, I guess you could say. And it's kind of tough because I juggle a lot of different hats now, being a creative entrepreneur and building Tev Media. But one thing I've learned, I kind of figured out kind of early on, is that it's very difficult for me to exist in both spaces, and I mean like the creative space and then the business space. It's really hard for me to exist in the Venn diagram in the center. Like my, I don't know if there are people out there who are really good at it or not, but I have not found a way to find harmony in that middle space. It's always like, you know, if I'm on a creative run or a creative tear, then like it's really hard for me to like stay in that, but then handle like important business sides of my you know, like business functions basically. And then vice versa, you know, like if I'm heavy in business mode, it's really hard for me to sit down, open up Premiere Pro, and like just zone out and get, you know, weirdly creative in there, like especially when I have all these important business tasks on my mind. So it's like right now I think, you know, I've come back to more on the creative side. I'm definitely making a lot more videos and having a lot of fun with it. But yeah, I think just right now I'm kind of in a lull, sort of. I'm not like on the business side, at least. Like right now I don't have a heavy influx like I did like 2 weeks ago, where like it was really difficult for me to buckle down and like finish stuff or even get things started. Or I have a pretty particular process in Premiere when it comes to cutting videos, but um at some point, you know, even though it's very streamlined, at some point I get to a part where like, all right, now it's kind of purely creative at this, from this moment forth in this project, you know, like I can organize footage, trim it, cut it down, all that stuff. But then when it comes to like compiling everything in sequence and, you know, driving the video and the flow in a way that like feels natural and is compelling in my opinion, like that's where all the creative sides comes into. And yeah, if I'm bogged down with like proposals and statements of work and, you know, waiting on agreements to get signed or countersigned, like it's hard for me to get like really like really flow nicely into that part of the process. So yeah, right now just finish each thing and just keep it going.
I think that's, well, thank you for sharing. First of all, that's an interesting insight into how to approach and juggle. I've seen it from the standpoint of when you're in the flow, you have to just ride the wave. And I've seen that both from when I'm in a creative flow, or if like I am like really just hammering home, tying together what I need to, you know, on the professional side of things, right? So there's, I think, strategies that I'm certainly not a master at it, but it takes me back to the idea of ritual. And I think we've talked about Joseph Campbell in the past, but I remember reading about him and how whenever he traveled, and he was a prolific writer, but whenever he traveled, what he would do is he would mimic his workstation at home to match that when he was on the road. So you check into wherever you're staying, then he'd take out his journal, he'd take out his book, put his pens out, and he would stage his desk or the table in wherever you're staying exactly like what it might have been like. And just the ritual aspect of setting yourself up to dive into those tasks, right? Like if you think about it, um, ideally you warm up before you exercise. So I think there's probably like little things that all of us can like learn that work for each of us, and it's going to be different for every person too. But to your point earlier, to being in that space, and that's something that I noticed too. I've had like some really very high creative windows of life, like, and almost feels like where I'm like creating just at like a prolific clip. Like anytime I've written a manuscript, usually I finish the bulk of the work, the creative work, and not necessarily the editing, but the creative work within, depending on length, anywhere from like a few days to a few weeks. But usually like I'll be in like these spaces and then I can just get it all out. But I have had the similar experience of painting. Like I'll be in these modes, in these zones where like I just have to paint, I have to do it, I have to try different things. And then I have a painting that I just began and then I stopped because I didn't like, it ended. And I'll go back to it, I'll finish the painting, I see the vision for it in my head, but I, for whatever reason, I didn't finish it yet. So I think as we go and have these experiences, we got to just keep playing, keep figuring out what works. And then, to your point, what you're applying, what you learn, just focusing, finishing things, setting those goals, right? Something we do a lot in my work. Each week we begin with three major priorities for the week. When for the year we have an overarching priority for our jobs, and then when I meet with my boss, something he asks are like three biggest things you're going to focus on to move the business forward. So I think about all of those things and how they intertwine, and I'm working on how do I apply that in my creative work as well, because I've had the experience, and it's kind of funny. I have a post-it somewhere. I'll find it and show you, or take a picture and send it. I used to have this post-it wall in my office when I worked at Hot, but one of them, and it was just random, but it's because I was wanted to do a lot of Taco Tuesdays, but I put basically eat more tacos. And then there was a video game. It was like X-Men versus Capcom. It was like save the world. And so I put those um on my post-it wall, in addition to like all these inspirational quotes and all this stuff. And I'll tell you, that year is probably the most tacos day in my life. And I'm pretty sure like I was able to play as one of those characters and like save the world, right? So a lot of it is, I think, tuning our minds in and having that focus, right? Like if you read a lot of the text about law of attraction, manifesting, I mean, the simple act of writing a goal on a paper, looking at it every day, I think some of it too, it's kind of like tuning into a frequency, just point of focus. But in my opinion, it seems like you're doing it, comparing, we've known each other for, God, if you think about it, less than two
Yeah.
years. Like we first connected about sometime in 2022. Um, and then we reconnected last year. And then, but if you think about it, but from when I met you to now, it seems like you've done so much with your business and moved it so far forward. And to me, that's super inspirational, because it takes a lot of courage to be a solopreneur, and I mean, I know you have collaborators, but you are Tev Media, right? You're the driving force behind it, and knowing a little bit about your story and the risk you had to take to do that. I mean, you could have played it way different, but you're doing it, man. And it's super awesome that you're doing it. I think that's also one of the compelling things about continuing the conversations with you and sharing that, and then highlighting that to listeners too, because I think it's inspiring. You gotta just keep going. Like, imagine if we were to do that. Let's say hypothetically we were able to do this 2 or 3 times a year, 4 times a year, whatever, for 5 years. I guarantee you, Tab Media is going to be in a totally different landscape 4 or 5 years from now.
Thank you. That's definitely what I hope for. um, and yeah, that's why it's like it's very stressful, but just appreciating small victories, and thinking about how far it's come in. I mean, I'm in my third year of being a creative entrepreneur, and it's definitely a lot different in the first year, a lot different in the second year, in a good way, all in good ways. But just like anybody else, you get so wrapped up in like what's happening in the moment that it's hard to like see what possibilities lie ahead, and the distance you covered, over the however recent past it is. But yeah, I mean, super proud of where we are now, and I mean, I would not have any chance in succeeding the way we have, or I have, or whatever, without the right support system in place too. Like, I would have probably attempted what I'm doing, but wouldn't have made it out of a year if it wasn't for having the right people around me to believe in me when I don't. Because it's not all an uphill, like, wonderful journey. There's definitely been moments where I doubted myself, doubted every decision that I ever made since embarking on this journey. But it's important to have the right people around you who can support you, believe in you when you can't believe in yourself, support you emotionally, financially, like all those things. So at some point it became like I owe it to those people to keep fighting and keep going and keep battling it out. It at one point it didn't even feel like I was trying to even do it for myself or for the original reason I set out for. It was like I'm a year and a half, almost 2 years into this journey, and I feel like I want to give up, but I can't do that to the people who have supported me to get this far. So, if they still are believing in me, then I'm going to keep going. So that's basically, at the end of the day, that's just the mantra. Just keep going.
Yeah, I think the more we keep showing up in life, the more we learn, the more we evolve. And the other thing too, in a way, what you just shared kind of reminds me of the point of no return, right? Like, you burning the bridges behind you, you burn the boats that you arrived on. There's no going back. And I think with any kind of worthwhile endeavor, that's sort of the mindset that you have to take with you. We live in an era of immediate gratification, paralysis via overanalysis, because there's so many choices. But if you make a choice to really give it life and breath, you have to like see it through for what it is. Now, granted, life can change. You can be presented with more information and evolve. But if you're not in that moment where the evolution has occurred, there's no need to move in a different direction. So you're doing it, man, and that's exciting. For me, I'm certainly excited for you. I feel like a lot of the times when I talk to you, it's like, oh, dude, we're doing this now, or we got this coming up, or this is in the pipeline, and that's super exciting. And I'll hear you too, because earlier in this conversation, you said that you kind of have like a window where there's this other period where you're shifting into being able to focus a little bit more on the creative again, because you don't have as much of the business side stuff going. But if you pause and you look at it and just go think about the ocean, there's high tide, low tide, nature, night and day. So learning to work within those balances too, I think are very crucial with whatever we're doing, whether it be a professional pursuit or even just navigating our relationships. I think nature precedes us and will exist far beyond us for a reason. And that's ultimately because I think the answers that we seek, or the the knowledge that's embedded with it, is like far wiser than anyone could really put into words. But we can definitely try. We can try to explain it. We try to
Try to
understand
make
it,
sense of it.
and it's just the journey. It's just the journey, man. And it's beautiful. Every aspect of it is beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, I think whether it's business or creative expression for me at this point, like, and most of my creative expression is through visual medium, through video and whatnot. But like, as long as I'm continuing to put one foot in front of the other, then I have to believe that that gets me one step closer to wherever it is that I'm trying to get to. So even though, like, business, I'm not getting a ton of inquiries or like a lot of inbound right now, like, I'm still opening up Premiere. I'm still setting up a camera in my kitchen, filming myself, making some drinks and doing all this stuff. And as long as I'm still making some sort of progress, I think that's all that matters, because even 1% progress increase every day for a year is 365% further than you were when you first started out. So, and it's something I used to actually share with my staff back when I was managing a restaurant, was that exact thought, was like, we should just be committed to making progress, no matter how large nor how small. Each day, just either a small step. Some days we have big steps, but like every day, just at least a step forward in the direction we're trying to get to, and do that for a year and just see how far we'll all come. So yeah, right now having a lot of fun making
Yeah.
some little cocktail video bangers in my kitchen. Got a cool little setup finally, and yeah, it's cool. My wife benefits because she gets to drink all the drinks I make, so it's a happy household right now.
Well, you know what's cool about that too is how you led into that, having a lot of fun. There's more than enough tragedy and hardship out there in life. So if we can like really enjoy and lean into those spaces and create more of those spaces where we can like be at ease, have fun, doing things that we enjoy doing, I think that's freedom. I've had the opportunity in my life to work with a lot of really wealthy people, and I've seen really miserable wealthy people, and I've seen very happy wealthy people, and then on the flip side, I've worked with people that don't have much, who are just the most joyous people, and then who are miserable as well, right? So I don't think freedom or joy have anything to do with like the bank account. Sure, the bank account helps. Having more zeros after the comma is definitely um, advantageous, but at the end of the day, you can't take any of that with you. But if you can like recapture that joyful spirit and approach to life that so many of us have when we first come into the world, and the awe of it all, that's one way to get through all the meh of all of this, because the world is not going to stop. And by that I mean the world in terms of humanity and our challenges, and um, there's always going to be something. So we can't be too weighed down by it. We got to find ways to be free. And the same thing too is like, you can set yourself up for total success. You could have a lot of money, you could have security, you could have projects in the pipeline, but it's going to be that one thing that challenges you that's going to come into the space. So the more and more that we can continue to like expand the space where we can hold, and my brother will say, don't let anyone rob you of your joy. But yeah, hold joy for yourself, whatever that is. I think as long as it's ethical, it's all good.
One thing that I found joy in again that I didn't think I would was actually just making drinks again. And then to be able to combine, my previous experiences as a beverage director and a bartender and stuff, and bring that to my, more recent skill set that I've been honing out for the last few years in terms of like creatively making videos and stuff, and being able to apply that to basically me making drinks in front of the camera and like really enjoying that, has been kind of surprising. I mean, we'll see how it pans out in the next 6 months. I feel like or maybe it's just me, but I feel like we have a tendency to get bored of things pretty quickly. But um, right now it's a blast. I mean, I'm even talking about doing a pop up behind a bar one night. Um,
I
yeah,
remember
and
you
I'm
mentioning that.
excited for it.
You
Oh, we're
should do
definitely
it.
gonna do it. It's just a matter of when. But those are things I didn't think that I would feel like genuinely excited about. I thought that phase of my like, well, it's weird to say because it was my creative expression and my professional work, but I thought those days were kind of behind me, and it's been kind of exciting to find that again, and have that additional outlet. We've talked about that before, having different outlets, so to be able to crack that one open again. Um, and yeah, that's the cool thing, is that like it's not like like I feel like I'm backtracking or like replacing all this video stuff I've been working on, and just solely focusing on me trying to like bartend or something again. But it's like now I actually can actually combine and smash those two things together, and like it's been really fun.
I think you have a lot of opportunities within that too. As you were talking just now, this idea popped in my head. But what if you take all of these videos that you've been doing, like with the mixology, then you feed that into an AI platform, and then you come up with like, the AI, like Tev, that's like, okay, I'm feeling like this, and then boom, it can whip up, based on all the knowledge that you feed it, it could whip up a cocktail for that moment for people. Like that'd be a pretty
Oh yeah, yeah,
crazy
yeah, yeah.
concept, get your
Like a
AI
mix bot.
mixologist. So yeah, I mean, and that segues into, technology and things that we have that are out there that are far beyond my realm of understanding. But you said this the last time. We live in, I forget how you worded it. We live in one of the best eras to be alive,
Yeah, I mean, I
right?
think that's
You remember saying that?
my optimistic viewpoint of the current state of things. Like war has always been a part of human history. Like all of the things that happen now, with the exclusion of like advanced technology, has always been a part of our existence. It just amplified, I think, because of how quickly all that information moves around now, and how quickly all of like
Mm,
mass mind control can happen. I guess, not to get into conspiracy and stuff, but you know, the truth is, like, there's cures to most diseases. We live longer. We have access to way more. So I still think like it's still the best time to be a human being. Like, remember when I've heard that the reason why we make such a big deal out of first birthday celebrations, because at one point in time it was just like almost miraculous to make it to 1 year. Like, that's not as much of an
mm,
issue anymore at all, really, right? Like, so things that we take for granted, I guess. But we're healthier than ever, we live longer than ever, we can cure our diseases and stuff like that. Like, it's, again, but I think I was trying to frame it in like, it just depends on how you want to see things, like whatever you
true.
see in your viewpoint of things is kind of what your reality becomes. So that's just, I don't know if it's blind optimism, but I'm not oblivious to or ignorant to the travesties in the world. But I try to control the controllables, and that's the way I see things.
I think that's a wise way to navigate, because if you're trying to control something that you have no control over, that's wasted energy and movement. So, and I also try to err on the side of always seeing the silver lining in something, and sometimes you really can't. But if the only thing you're doing is you're still trying to find a way there, that's that's better than not. It's a it's a pretty fast road, or pretty fast collision into negativity. I think, like, it can really spiral and get out of control, but there's no reason to accelerate that. Like, and I don't know why, but I've thought about this. Like, I just have visuals. I remember being a kid and just like most serious little kid ever, probably, or one of them, but
I could
sitting
imagine
there and
little
like
Jay,
looking ahead. And
just like heavily introspective as a small child.
my mom likes to frame it as like, when I was born, I was looking around, and then she wanted to understand what was I thinking or looking at so intensely or intently. And then I became a writer and a communicator and a storyteller, so then you could find out about what I'm thinking about. But yeah, I just early on, I think I've always had this awareness that, one, there's something special about life. Two, got to do what I can to add value with the time that I'm here and make an impact, so that it's a healthier, better space for other people. And then three, just try not to get in my own way, because, which I'm really good
That's a
at.
tough one to not do.
But there's well, the visual I keep thinking, and I'm pretty sure I might have told you this before. I picture this boat going down, and it's whitewater rapids, and you got barrels in the back, and you're like, "Oh, look at that rock up there. Okay, we're gonna crash into it, but before we do, let's take this barrel and throw it out in front, and let's smack into that and see what happens." And I don't know why, but I remember thinking about that as a little kid. And then I also have this other vision of like standing on like a little hill and looking out and just seeing all the roads and the ways everything kind of intersect, but ultimately it all goes in the same direction. So, how do you just enjoy and be and lift up? And I've meditated a lot at wordplay, right? Like, to live and love fully, have an adventure in service, all these things. But at the end of it, I just want to be the healthiest version of myself that I can be. And it takes me back to something, my dad said, that I've said many times, be the best, do the best that you can each day. And it's funny, like, I thought about that the other day. And truthfully, like maybe some days are like an 8 and other days are the 4, but you know what? I'm going to be the best fucking version of that 4 that I can that day. And then if the next day I'm a 7, then same thing, you know, and then if it goes back to a 6, but I think that's what it means to just be present, you know. And then when I look at spiritual texts, right, or I look at someone like Jesus, just for example, which is, you know, going to be related to a lot of people in the Western world, at least. When I read and I look at sort of the pattern and the story arc there, what I see is someone who was just ultimately present. Granted, was I there? No. Were any of us there? No. Were the people that were recording it there? No. These are retellings of earlier texts, right? But I think the metaphor that lies, and that's why, you know, Christ, if you will, is the path. It's because it was truly ultimately being present. There's parts of scripture where it talks about him being very mad because people were gambling in the synagogue. So he goes in, he throws that. I mean, that was him angry, right? And then there's parts where he like felt, you know, my God, why have you forsaken me? Like despair, like feeling like God has left him out to dry. So, long story short, I think what can also liberate us is just be where you are. And I think what you were saying earlier too, right? Is something I talked a lot about with my therapist too, being mindful, being present. What does that really mean? So when you're in those spaces where it's grind time on the business side, just be there. And when you're in those spaces where it's time to just flow creatively, just be there and free ourselves, free yourself, free myself, anyone that's listening, free yourself from the idea that, oh, but I can't do this at the same time. You can't do both at the same time anyway.
Yeah.
You just got to be where you are. So it's just all part of it, and it's not easy. Like the hardest work is the inner work, I think, and it's continuing to show up and the discipline to allow ourselves to go through all the adversity of life.
I dig that. Yeah, well, it's interesting because like if you think about some of like at least in my lifetime, the most like successful creative people that I knew that are closer to me even, like they always work with somebody who is one side of the brain and then they're the creative side. Like my friend's mom is a
Mm,
pretty successful painter artist, and god, she's so full of wisdom. I love talking with her about everything too. But she's got her guy who handles all the deals, all the like anything that's heavily business minded, and literally their agreement is like he handles that, she can focus and paint and like be free in that space. And I guess it's the first time that as a professional, like everything's so intertwined for me nowadays, right? Like there's not as much separation. It's a lot of gray, a lot of mixed up. Like before I worked in restaurant industry, hospitality, and like I pursued hip hop, like as a hip hop recording artist is something I did as a creative outlet, you know. But those were not linked really at all, you know. But now I'm trying to learn how to be an entrepreneur and build a business, and then also trying to like be a better filmmaker in this at the same exact time. And you know, I don't have much of a team, not one that's working with me day in and day out, you know. So it's pretty much like all on me to do this. And you know, that's all directly linked to at least the financial quality of my life as well, and the family of my and the life of my family. So it's been that's and these are parts of the reasons why stuff like this is so challenging, at least, you know, breaking off,
mm,
becoming a creative entrepreneur. And that's the thing too, like I set out to start Tev Media knowing that I wanted to build something, like, and I'm still working on building it. Like it's going to be a forever process, but I knew stepping foot into this world was like into this world of entrepreneurship, that I knew I wanted to create a business. I didn't want to become a business, if that makes sense. um and I just have to trust myself, trust that the people who believe in me and whatnot, like they that as long as I continue to again take that one step, put one foot in front of the other at least each day, again, I'm just continuing to build this still, regardless of where it's at right now, you know.
Well, I think too, since you have that curiosity, like let's say you get Teves to a certain point and somebody comes in and like, yo, we want to buy it. Here's $2 million or here's $5 million or whatever. Here's 100,000. And it's whatever it is, it's the price that you're like, all right, cool. And you hand the keys over. I think who you are, you're going to want to
Mhm.
build something else. And I think as we go through these different cycles and chapters, it's how do we take what we've learned and applied before and channel that into the next endeavor. And and that's something that I read about recently when it comes to like creating art, and it's something I've really been trying to apply to. It's like, okay, just because I did this and maybe I feel like it's like not perfect here, it doesn't mean that that practice and that repetition is not going to help me create something the next time that's more in alignment. So in a way, when you look at it, there's really no such thing as wasted motion or energy. It's all learning, and that's just the flow. That's just the way to go. You said this earlier about focusing on what you have, excuse me, the ability to control, and that all comes down to like what's up between our ears, right? So controlling the thoughts, and you could argue that we don't have control over thoughts as they come in, but I think the control comes in where we keep the attention. So that intrusive thought, that negative thought that comes in, oh, am I doing the right thing? Is this it? It's not. I think one way to counter is it's natural to question, and then move to the next. Don't get on the train and get off. And this you might appreciate this. I remember one time I was in New York and I was really grappling. This is when I went through what I would dub my first season of loss in life, right? And I was going across the country, wandering, praying for dreams, interpreting them, asking for signs, like really trying to work better with my intuition. But I remember I was trying to like go from New York to to this to Newark actually. So I was in New York City and I was trying to take the train from New York City to Newark because I was going to meet a friend, and it's the first time I'd ridden the train between the two cities. Right? I grew up on an island. We got buses, we got cars, and our feet, and bikes and skateboards and stuff. And I was in such a low point of life and really just hurting and trying to heal and grow. And there was like this spirit of fear, if you will, that I needed to shake. And I remember like not wanting to miss my train. And this is when technology wasn't as good as it is today. Not want to miss my stop. And my fear propelled me. I got off on the wrong stop. And I remember getting off and looking around like, this isn't where I got to be. And I sat down for a second. I just started laughing at myself because it's just like, what I did. And then I had to wait, had to get on the next one, finally got to where I was meant to be, and that's just what it is. And then fast forward years later, better technology, being in Tokyo for the first time and looking around me and seeing the sea of people who were just as, if not more, lost than me, because that's such a labyrinth to try to wander through. Although better train system, if you miss your stop, it's easier to get back to your original destination. But I mean, every time, I mean, that's one of the pastimes I think is if you go to a foreign country, you got to get lost. And so I've gotten lost in, I guess, in a way, depending on what you subscribe to. I've gotten lost in the United States and I've gotten lost overseas since I grew up here in, what could arguably be its own little country and once was. But just being where we are, allowing, learning, growing, flowing, that's all anyone can ask from us. And something that came to me the other night when I was talking to Dylan, free yourself to be yourself, and free others to be where they are. And I think part of that just has to do with just like being present, being here now, and just going. Like so much times I think the conflict and the challenges that we have, it's fighting what is. And life is not meant to be stagnant. I mean, if you think about it, the earth rotates, right? So if the earth itself is rotating and the entire universe and galaxies are rotating, then things are meant to be moving. Whether we want them to move or not, they're going to move. So we have to really just learn to allow. And so we're going to move too. Even if we think we're stuck, who you are today is different than where you were yesterday. So natural to have fear, natural to have challenges, but it all plays some kind of role. And then think about, if you will, a giant masterpiece painting. every one of those strokes contribute to the masterpiece that is there. And I think the same thing can be said about our lives.
Oh man, you said a lot, but one of the things that you were talking about in terms of like I forget the exact words you use, but it was like basically you're talking about like the process of back when you're talking about creativity. It just brought me to remember my phrase that I think I've said to you before, even when we're recording one of these, that I feel like nothing is ever lost in the process. Um,
Mm.
whether it's creative or that's life, in my opinion. Because, and honestly, you just said a lot of it at the end too, right? Like the earth is constantly moving. Like life is meant to be on the move. And even if you're stuck, like you don't do anything today, like you still end up being a different person tomorrow than you were today. And that's all part of the process, right? And I mean, if I can go back to, my fundamentals creatively, I think that's why for me it's important to finish something once you start it, because whether or not at the end of it
Mm.
I'm like I feel like it's my best work ever or not, like most of the time it's not going to feel that way, but to hold myself accountable to finishing that thing regardless, and all the knowledge, wisdom, and experience that's gained in the process of completing that said project, and everything that I can take away from that to apply to the next thing that I do, is why I think it's important to have the mindset of like finishing something as much as possible, because if not, then it's kind of a slippery slope too, right? Like if I just have like a hard drive full of projects that are unfinished, like at what point like do I actually make a decision on it's time to finish this thing? And I guess it's a little easier when it comes to client work, because you're adhered to you're contractually obligated to make sure things get done, or you're going to be in a really
Mm.
painful spot financially and with your business. But the stuff that I'm shooting right now, a lot of it is like the drinks I'm making in my kitchen. Like I have no client for that. I'm honestly just doing it because it's fun. And but those are the moments where I think it's most important to finish that thing, is because I don't have those guidelines, those restrictions on coming down on me from a client or from a paid job. So again, we're not buried in client work at the moment. And that's not even something that I'm looking for, just to share my philosophy on that. Like I'm not looking to do 30 projects a month. Like I am more than happy with just having a few clients on a monthly, recurring basis that, cover overheads. And then, I would be more than happy with that, because I have a lot of creativity that I want to express too. Excuse me. And things that we want to do ourselves. Um, so I think just having good I guess clear goals. If you want to be buried in work from this day forth, I mean, to each their own, but that's just not. And it might sound counter to me saying I want to build something, but I still believe that the vision I have in my head for where we could take things doesn't necessarily mean that we're just completely buried with 10 clients a month. It's me and Tyler pretty much. I have every once in a while I can hire somebody else, but it's me and Tyler, mostly me. Um, I just don't have that kind of bandwidth, and I don't want to bury my life away and lose complete focus of who I am as a person in the process.
Yeah. And that's what you're saying here on May of 2024. I mean, that could shift. It was funny when you said, I think you said, I don't want, 20, 30 clients. And then I thought of this thing that I saw recently, and it's like, if we tell the universe not, the universe doesn't hear a negative, right? So basically, you just put it out in the ether and said, I do want 20 to 30
I
clients.
don't want a
And
billion
you could
dollars.
have that. I don't also want $1 billion. Uh, but that's part of it. And you put it out there. And, we've talked about this before, I think offline, but in order to scale, uh, unfortunately, things don't always grow parallel. Like resources will sometimes outpace growth of a business, and then um, growth will outpace resource. But in order to scale, at some point, you might outgrow something. You might need to like shift and do a different, pay more, or need to hire more people. But that's there's power in that, being able to choose and see where you want to take it. And I think sometimes too it goes back to like that analogy of what are you building, right? Like, so are you building a concert hall, like an intimate concert hall, 20, 30 people? Are you building an amphitheater, 3,000 people? Are you building a stadium, 100,000 people? Are you building a huge wide open air, millions of people type of festival? Like, who knows, but you just got to go on that journey and see where it leads. And at the end of it, as long as you're happy and fulfilled, because, going again back to the earlier analogy, our fair tragedy and challenges are out there, and the world is more than willing to deliver, especially via media, social media, negative people, deliver reasons to rob us of our joy. So, keep doing what you did, man. I think it's super awesome. It'll be cool. It'll be cool to see 5 years from now. We'll have to we'll have to
Yeah.
pre-schedule it, put it in the calendars on May 16th of 2029. Like the catch up, what happened in the past 5 years. But you're doing it, bro. Congrats. And you talk about finishing earlier. Again, thank you again for what we worked on. I know we talked and we had all kinds of ideas, but you got to start somewhere. We started, we finished, and here we are. By the time that this is aired, we'll have crossed at least that initial finish line, and we'll see
Yeah,
what's
and even
next.
since we shot that with Dylan, I've also obviously we both have experienced, whatever one can experience in a,
Lots of
was that like an
change.
8 month stretch or something like that. But yeah, in terms of like, my skill set as a filmmaker has definitely gotten a bit better and a bit more polished. We've added some different things to our creative skill set around here. And I think, moving forward, any other um, related projects that we take on like this, I think it's just going to be a little bit more, maybe just a little bit easier to build out a vision that we'll execute on later. Because even when me and you first started talking about it, it was very like kind of all over the place, I guess, in a way, not in a bad way, but that's just, again, you got to start somewhere. There's nothing lost in the process. So like the fact that we got in and did something, and then now we're getting around to the point of like saying that we're finishing it up, and everything that's transpired in that time period, like as a filmmaker on my side, I think, and on your side as a storyteller as well, definitely. So I think it's gonna be pretty cool whatever we end up, whatever step two is in this part of the process, or in this soul full project. Oh wait, was I supposed to drop the name?
Yeah. No, you're good, bro. That's all good. So I will link in the description the clip that we talked about, and then you'll also be able to see um, the audio and then the full raw version. So yeah, thanks again to Tevis and just the growth. I mean, I'm super stoked for you. I'm definitely stoked for how things have changed for me, and it's pretty. It's exciting, bro. Like honestly, I'll go back to one of my colleagues who at times is quite challenging. Shout out Barrett, much love. But part of the challenge had to do with a difference in seeing and understanding the art form. But something he told me one time, I'll never forget. I was sitting in his office. He's like, at the end of the day, we're making art. There could be a lot worse things that we're taking part in that we're doing. So you know what? I'm super. I was amazed. Like as soon as you sent me the video that you pieced together, I mean, you made magic out of like an hour and a half of footage, and you distilled it into less than 90 seconds, which is amazing. And I think when I listen to the full audio, I really feel like we're able to capture and draw out the story. And that was a combination of, I think, the setting, the questions, the ebb and flow, and honestly, I think having the cameras there also brought aspects of Dylan out. So and I hear that in the audio, and you can see that in the visuals. So it's all good. It's we made art, and there's a lot worse things we could be making. So thank you
100% with
again.
that.
Super
Yeah,
stoked.
that's sounded rooted in gratitude to me right there. Um, as you're talking about it just now, it kind of occurred to me that I think it was a little easier for me to pull that piece out of it because there was some sort of guidelines for me to go with on that, knowing that Kalana Bash is coming, a second annual Kalana Bash coming up. So I knew I wanted to pull something out of there that would, you know, represent him and his father and the way he feels about his dad a bit. And then obviously throwing it back to, the song he performed. And, it just kind of, it really helped me know where exactly in that very long conversation, know exactly what I should be looking for. And yeah, I mean, I was pretty choked up when I was putting the final touches on it, because I was like, wow, this feels like a really special moment.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think I have the words for how happy I am with what you created, because I think for me, part of the reason why I wanted to, and I shared with you, and then in the conversations that we had, we felt like Dillon was the perfect starting point. I think so much growth has come for me in life from loss, and then arguably losing my dad is the hardest loss I've ever had to deal with. And sharing that with Dillon, and then just knowing that he's so much younger than I am, and he dealt with that loss so much earlier in life. I was just sharing earlier with somebody. I I don't know how well equipped I would have been to deal with it at that age and that point in time. And I'll never know, because that's not what my
You were
experience of
never
it
meant
was.
to know.
But yeah, but when I found that out, and I shared that experience with Dillon, it was just like, man, I just want to be a part of, like, being there to see him be successful. Like, whatever I can do to point more people towards him, and just highlight that, because he's so positive. Like, so many cool things have come out of such a tragic thing, and so many of us are faced with every day. We face the we have the choice of, like, being pono, living aloha, or not, basically. And he came out of such a hard thing, and that's really what he vibrates towards, and super awesome. So, such a cool story. Again, thank you, and we'll see where it leads, because it's pretty exciting. You
Gonna
know,
get still kind of bummed we missed out on Adam, when we're
we
like
didn't miss out on
the
that. That's still
and honestly,
TBD.
again though, like nothing lost in the process. And honestly, whatever happened or didn't happen may probably have been for the best. And whenever we come back around to that, I think we'll have an experience. We'll have experience under our belt to apply to it. You know,
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's an easy one. We can make that and a whole
I
bunch of
see
others,
him around
but
the corner all the time.
all in time. All in its own time, man. And that's, I mean, honestly, if we didn't go through that process, and then, um who knows,
Yeah,
at least we tried it. There's a lot of people that get stuck
yeah,
on not even trying things.
that's
So my
way more
teacher,
common for the
for
record,
the
to
longest
just never attempt anything at all.
my teacher, when I first met her, and I still struggle saying try sometimes, but she is very Yoda esque in terms of do or do not. There is no try. But if I there was this one day where we were walking around, and I remember we ended up in Diamond Head Crater, and it was so funny because she, like, walked up to me and she flicked me in the forehead. This 70-some-odd-year-old lady at the time, just, and she's like, "Don't say try, just do. You're what? You're what?" Like, that would be, she's like, "You what?" I'm like, I would always have to, like, correct myself. And it's funny because it reminded me in some ways of my biological grandmother, who would often correct us if we spoke English incorrectly. So if you would say "can I," she would say "may I," or she would like, what's that? And you'd have to catch
I
it.
don't know.
And
Can you?
it's sort of
That's what I used to get hit with.
it's sort of it's sort of magical, I guess, when you think about it. So it's funny as I say that. You're gonna get a kick out of this. There's this book that's sitting on my desk, and the title is "No Coincidence." So I'll leave it at that. Like, truly, I think there's an ebb and flow and a reason for our life. There are things beyond our control that will happen when they do. So focus on what you can control. And if that's just your attitude, and cultivating and stoking the fire of gratitude, so that you can just enjoy even the smallest of things. Like, man, I can't tell you. on the other side of me. So to my left, it says no coincidence. To my right, I see this painting that I worked on, and there's this photo that I took of a cup of coffee in front of a bookshelf, and that's a memory I had when I was in Korea in the frigid, freezing winter of Korea, which was very cold. So that cup of coffee was so valued, and you know. I enjoy a cup of coffee. My wife and I, like, it's one of our favorite pastimes is the morning coffee. And so there are things in everyone's space. So whether that's just waking up and opening your eyes and having another shot to give it a go, or that's something super amazing, just always just be thankful, because truly it can be so much worse for every single one of us.
It's funny with the whole Yoda thing is I don't know how old I was. I think I was still pretty stony back then. But the funny thing is I was stony, but I was very like I felt like I was really connected at the time. The thing that I wasn't good at due to like my lack of experience was I wasn't good at keeping it to myself, I guess. And I would tend to kind of just be in my be in my zone of like intertwining with the universe and like expressing that around other people I was with. And later I learned that they didn't really like that, but I wasn't really aware. But anyway, I remember when I came to understand like how much the stories that we tell ourselves about ourselves and the things that we say, like that we project out verbally, and how much that like really had an impact on my mindset. I remember I would literally stop myself every time I would hear the word try come out of my mouth. I would stop myself mid sentence. I'd be like, wait, no, I'm gonna do this thing. And it's crazy how much of a difference that made moving forward. Like I just felt like I was just able to learn more, just make quality progress over shorter periods of time when I stopped using the word try, because I perceive that as like try being like if I said I was going to try something, I was almost like giving myself an excuse to fail it. Um, where I was softening that blow, so I wouldn't just go and do the thing. Like I felt like when I would tell myself, when I would rewire that from try to do and like actually express that, I would hold myself accountable to that thing to like go and get it done. And maybe it was just more, I don't want to say menial tasks, but obviously I wasn't becoming a surgeon or anything like that. I wasn't saying I'm going to go do surgery or anything like that, but things that are within reason that you can actually accomplish and get done. And the thing is, we can do a lot more than we give ourselves credit for. And yeah, that was just a way of expressing words to kind of give myself a more positive mindset. But then the stories that we tell ourselves, just even if we internalize those, like the impact that they have on us, we become the stories that we say about ourselves. So like people who have a tendency to down downplay themselves, and even in they project it as a joke, like, oh, I'm whatever. I can't think of one that's not vulgar, but like some people be like, I'm such a piece of shit. Like you say that enough times, you become that. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and the funny thing is, those are all things that, like I said, I was like, I don't know, like 22, 23 years old, just stony and vibing out to life. But um, yeah, I think I should be probably. There's times where I could do a better job of that at my current stage in life, honestly.
I think that's honestly lifelong, though. Like I'm still working on the inner talk. I have days and moments where I gotta pause and watch it and make sure I don't go off the cliff or the deep end of negativity. And that's just what it is. That just comes. But to your point, I think there's great power in words. I mean, similar to how you phrased it. I remember earlier thinking about it, life being the the lies that we believe or the stories that we tell, or the stories that we tell, and or the stories that we believe and the lies that we tell. It just really comes down to perspective. So it's just practice. It just takes time, and I think a lot of it too, it comes from a standpoint of just having a healthy sense of self. I think something I realized earlier in my journey was just I'm always going to be working on myself. Like, and so freeing myself of the sense of I need to be anywhere else or be anyone else other than where or who I am in this in each moment. And that's a tough one. Sometimes it's a hard pill to swallow. And the other thing too, I think sometimes when it comes to like putting ourselves out there and taking chances, the shame that society, other people can put us through, that we in turn then just like internalize for whatever reason. Like there's this fear of trying and doing, and we think about, oh, what if I fail? Like what if this, what if that happens? But what if you flipped it? Like what if I succeed? What does that look like? What does that feel like? You know, like it's easy and it's always out there, like, oh, if you fail, if you don't do this, if you don't do that. But there's, you know, what was it, Edison? It took him like 10,000 times before he
The
figured
light
out
bulb, yeah.
the light bulb. So, you know, that's why, and you said it earlier, keep going, right? Imua, like, just keep showing up to life every single day. So anytime we get a chance to like open our eyes, wow, thank you, I got another opportunity at this. And I think about it in terms of fulfillment, and oftentimes I've thought about it from the standpoint of like tapping into that deep sense of fulfillment. Now, if that takes me uh 20 years, oh, bonus, that'd be awesome. It takes me 40 some odd years, okay, cool. If it takes me 60 years, doesn't matter, 80 years, 90 years, whatever time I got. But I gotta think that if you tap into that deep sense of whatever it is and that connection with the universe and life, all that matters is that you touched it. Didn't matter how long it took you to get there. And i I don't know why, and maybe it's because I'm coming upon my 44th year of life shortly. But I had this thought the other day when I woke up and I was starting my day, because it's been like 20 years since I graduated college, right? And I remember at the time thinking like, I took long, because technically it took me 6.5 years to get my bachelor's degree. So then for the longest time I'd tell people like, oh yeah, but you know, 4 years at Manoa, and I would just ignore the first 2 years, right? But what does it matter? Like that's what it took me to do it, and I did it, and that's my path, that's my journey. It's different than others. And something else my teacher would often talk about too is we're all in different lines, and there's some lines that some of us are first in line, there's some lines that some of us are 10th in line. But the reality is like, if you really like were to like look at it, no one is in the same space. You know, and I go back to that analogy earlier, looking at some of the really wealthy people I've had the opportunity to know or work with or whatever. I've seen some happy, I've seen a lot more miserable. So it's not about the wealth that you have, the monetary wealth. I think it's more about cultivating wealth within, and that starts with gratitude, that starts with appreciation, and being able to appreciate life, warts and all. So, you know, what's funny about a wart too is sometimes they just disappear. You know, but if you like stare at it and you look at it every single day, you try to get rid of it, you can't. But then before you know it, it's gone. So, you know, just appreciate all every season. Another thing Audio would say would be wear each decade like a like fashion, you know, so what's in vogue in fashion at the time. So just be where you are, you know, if that's the season and you're meant to wear this coat, great. And it changes seasons and now you're on to like resort wear, great, whatever. But just be where you are. And I think that's sort of the flow of it, you know. So in hearing and looking at like sort of this the journey that we went just in the last, here we are over an hour again.
That I'm not surprised
You
this time.
know, no, for sure, for sure. uh I guess it doesn't surprise me that everything worked out exactly what we did, the way that it did. So it's all good, you know. It's you're on the journey. I'm on the journey. Everyone out there is on the journey, and it leads wherever it does.
I see why, like, being present, and how gratitude, why they when they compound together, they become exponentially more powerful, because a lot of what you're saying about you know just being where you are and who you are in that moment, and like combining that with just like a deep appreciation for even just being there to begin with in that moment, I think can be just very powerful insight into life, really, and maybe help you deal with a lot of maybe not so favorable scenarios. I got a quick question for you. What is your general feeling of like stoicism as a whole, like as a philosophy? And my follow up to that would be, do you have a copy of the Daily Stoic?
I do not have a copy of the Daily Stoic, but I have a number of copies of Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. So I think that Stoicism, I'm drawing a blank on the exact definition of it, but from what I've researched earlier, and Marcus Aurelius and his thoughts contributed to a lot of contemporary Stoic views and philosophy. And then I've watched a number of videos over the years, but I think there's relevance. I think embracing life and not being in an extreme, I think it's really, really key. I mean, when I look back at some of Marcus Aurelius's work, one of the things that he did that I've tried on a number of occasions is the letters. So there's like that whole section where he has the letters to all these people. And I can't tell you how many times I've sat down and I've written my letters to parents or loved ones or life in the world, like even to myself, right? And I think it's healthy sometimes to sit down and do that and approach life from the standpoint of I think it just comes down to non-attachment, So yeah, certainly. Then believe you me, I have aspirations, I have dreams, I have goals, but if I don't attain those, does that really define who I am or the success of my life or the quality of my life? I
I
hope
don't think
not.
so. Those are all
And if
things, you know.
if
Those are all things.
yeah,
Those are all external. I feel like the journey, as much as possible, should be focused on the internal and who you are, and not focused on
yeah,
the things that we go out and get. Because the things are not what define us.
it's funny. There's a lot of people who have said it, and they're usually people who have more often than not, maybe not more often than not, but oftentimes I've heard it for people who have like a ton of stuff, right? A ton of wealth, ton of money, ton of experience. They're often the ones who be like, yeah, it doesn't matter. So they've seen it from both sides, right? They've seen it from, and a lot of people have might have come from nothing, or maybe they had like, silver spoon from throughout. But my teacher often framed it as like thinking in terms of what do you want to experience. So that's what helped me to arrive at the realization I was seeking an adventure and service, and if I were to deconstruct that even further, adventure, feeling excited every day to get out there and be of service in some capacity. And when I started approaching life in that fashion, I think it really freed me to be less connected to the how of that. Like certainly we can operate within very, I think, fine defined lines, but you can also just free it up and have the same experiences without those big lines like blocking you into. So I think I've always been a color outside the box, very abstract type of artist, but now I'm working on evolving more towards like seeing the rhythm to that abstraction. And so far it's maybe so far is not the right phrase to lead into that, but it's coming together. And I think really the realization I'm coming back to, a lot of it too, as well as this acceptance. There's a lot in life that was beyond my control. There's going to be a lot more that I encounter that is beyond my control, and so it's not fighting and allowing, and I can go back to jujitsu. I can go back to life. I feel like life just keeps giving me similar answers in a variety of forms. So just trying to make the most out of
Are
that.
those similar answers to the same questions, the same proverbial questions?
I think it's similar answers to different questions, really. You know, like when I think about what's in my realm of control, I can't control my thoughts. I can control my reaction to my thoughts. and that's in the inner side. I can control what I'm consuming, what I'm putting into my mind. I can control and make an effort to cultivate more discipline, to be positive, to exercise, to eat right, to get good rest, right? If it's something where I'm a part of something else outside of me, I can't control what my colleagues can do or are doing or how they might receive things. I can only control what my role within the system allows me to be able to operate and
Like
do.
to have
So do
influence.
that as best as possible. Uh in some ways, yes, and I think in other ways, it's a lot of times our misery comes from fighting beyond what's our control. So, I mean, you can certainly try to have influence over something beyond your control, but if at the end of the day, it's not going to move the needle, but there's another way you can approach it, or reframe, or contextualize, and that also goes back within, and then with Bev. Um, how do I just be more loving? How do I be more supportive while also nurturing myself? So it's finding a balance in that. How do I think what it comes down to for me, and I've thought about this a lot, what is the best way to give full expression to myself in whatever moment it is? And in some cases, I might be angry, but I need to give full expression to that in order to move into the balance of it all. So I'm really trying not to live in extremes, because I think what I did a lot earlier in life was I would hold a lot in, and then I would fluctuate from extreme to extreme. But then I was introduced to the concept and the philosophy of upeka in Buddhism, to roughly to walk the middle path. And there was one flavor, as they said, of that: not too happy, not too sad. And the goal was to always be a little bit happy, because if you're always a little bit happy, really the gift that you're giving is consistency to the world around you. So I really strive to be consistent, and I think the more that I work on myself, the better that I can show up. And I also am striving to give myself more grace, because it can be pretty exhausting showing up in life every day. And that's why I think back to my parents and what I observed as a kid. And I don't know how they did it. Both had two jobs, um, raising a kid, and then I look at like someone like yourself raising a child, running a business. I don't know how you do it, because I got my own challenges. You know what I mean? So all we can do, going back to that thing I said earlier, like free myself to really be myself and be wherever I am in those moments, the seasons that those moments make up, and really throughout life. And hopefully, if we do that, or if I do that, then I'll navigate it a little bit better. So to go back to your answers question, if I think about it from a jujitsu standpoint, like if I fight, like I'm gonna get in an even worse position, right? So I need to like relax. I need to like be free in that moment, to find the window of escape, or to change position, to be in a more advantageous place, or maybe reset. If I look at it from the standpoint of nature, high tide, low tide, so what is it? Like, am I going to go out and try to like surf when it's flat? Probably not. Right. So it's learning to just kind of really observe and feel. So what you were saying earlier about the flows with the business, like that's relatable for me, because when I look back at balancing having a creative life where I've been hyper creative, but also I've always had at least one full time job and other part time side hustles and things, and still moving all of that forward, it's being and allowing and learning myself. And some days, honestly, like I might want to be creative, but I'm tired. So in those moments, I got to rest. And in other places, I might be okay, go work out, because that'll give you energy. I was just watching this interview, and it was talking about how do you continue to create and give more energy to yourself. So it's just finding out what works for each of us, you know?
It's like they say, if you're caught in a rip, you don't try to escape the rip. You swim in parallel to the shore. You swim alongside it, pretty much, to get out of it.
I think I think what it is too, I feel like our natural state is to kind of be in awe. And if you look at kids, kids have that, right? And then we get so many different things for various reasons. So we sort of like lose that sense of awe. So we sort of like lose connection to that natural sense of awe. but it's just getting back to that. And if we get back to that, then we're not going to drown in life. Because look at it from a kid's perspective, right? Like, there's so many things you could be stoked about because it's brand new, or maybe it's even not brand new, but you just like really, really love it. And then maybe for an adult, that's silly or it doesn't make sense, or um, it just doesn't connect, or oh, that's not going to help you out in the future, kind of thing. But honestly, man, like, we'd be a lot happier and a lot more free, I think, if we really embraced the
The feeling of
childlike.
wonder.
And I think that,
Yeah.
yeah,
The feeling of wonder
go back to
without
that. We all
a
still have
phone
it.
in my hand, where you completely counterbalance that feeling of wonder by doing this. you
Yeah.
know
One of my one of my favorite things is to have paint on my hands, which is really funny because, like, if I eat, um, I always got to make sure my hands are clean. And then I remember working out in the yard, like it was rainy like this, like how it is right now on Oahu, and I made like mud pies and mud castles and stuff in the yard. Then I went in, I had to be clean, but like when it comes to painting, like I love it. It doesn't bother me. Like I'm not gonna go in. Like I'll wash my hands, I'll wash, but I'm not gonna like scrub my skin off to get the paint off if it's there. Like I don't know what that is, but yeah, it's just being present, being in it. I think that's also too why I love analog. Like I got into photography because I shot on Polaroids first, and then went to 35 millimeter, and I love the potential of the what if,
yeah.
and then I go and I look and I got an iPhone with like, years and years of photos, right? I got like 30,000 files on there of photos and videos. And I go through these moments where I'm kind of like, for why? Like the ones that mean the most to me are the ones of Bev and I, of family, of loved ones, moments. But, there's other photos that, don't matter. But why do I still have them like in there? I should just delete it. I've gone through purges at point. Like I was a hyper minimalist. I don't know if I've shared that with you, but at one point I only had like four pairs of boxers. I had like two pairs of pants, like jeans and a pair of slacks, and then a pair of shorts, shoes, one pair of shoes, slippers, and then a couple, maybe like five t-shirts to kind of like mix it up in one button up, and I think a jacket or a hoodie, and that was all the clothes that I had. And I really subscribed to that minimalist aspect, and then now it's night and day. Hardcore denim head, like gave into like my sneakerhead impulses, and but for why? None of that matters. None of it I can take with me. But it's it's just part of the journey. It's just figuring it out. It's just kind of going and experiencing, finding what makes each of us fulfilled, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a recovered hype beast, I mean, I got multiple $500 Bape hoodies over here right next to me. I bought them like 7 or 8 years ago, but
Whoa.
you know, I look back on that part of my life, which actually probably consists of most of my adult life, come to think of it. But I look back on it now and I'm like, how silly was I? How foolish was I to do all that? But honestly, for whatever reasons, and during that phase of my life, those things seem to have brought me joy. So being a rapper, didn't help neutralize any of that behavior at all. So
Well, I mean, that's what I mean too about freeing yourself to be where you are. So if that's the space that you're
yeah,
in, then that's the space that you're in. And if you enter and you go into a different space, then be
we're
there.
just
But
bad as
it's
people in terms of like allowing people to have that space for themselves to enjoy what it is that brings them happiness. We're so like opinionated
and
and imposing our preferences and stuff on like like what do you call that, like projecting that out around us to everybody else, right? Like that's something that I think we could all do a better job of, right? Like if somebody has 250 pairs of Jordans and like they're not, a terrible person, then like who cares? Like let them, like just because that's not something I would do. Again, if it's not causing harm to anyone else, only their own financial situation potentially. But jokes aside, like then we should allow each other that space to enjoy the things that it is that brings us happiness. I'm guilty of it as
And I
well. You
think
know, I think
people,
maybe I'm a bit better at internalizing it and keeping it to myself, but some people are not good at that at all. And you know, I tend to find myself incompatible with those types of people, so I'm not usually around them, but it's impossible to escape them. You know, like they're still around. And I've over the years, and like that was part of what I was saying earlier about, you know, back when I was stony and just vibing with the universe. Like I think I was just bad at like keeping it more to myself, and like, you know, in my being all blind, you know, whatever phases, I would just kind of like project that out around everybody around me about like my perception of the world and the universe, and people didn't like that, you know. And I remember, actually, now that I'm talking about all this, is that the person who brought that to my attention, and I give him a lot of credit looking back on it, because it had clearly been something that was bothering him, my like ramblings of whatever I talked about, but he never like exploded on me about it, you know, because the moment he decided to talk to me about it, like I feel like, thinking back, I don't remember what exactly was said, but I do remember feeling like I didn't feel like he was attacking me. Actually, like I felt bad when he brought it to my attention. I was like, "Oh, dude, like I didn't even realize. Like I'm so sorry." And maybe that was one of those moments in my life where like I knew to like dial that back. And you know, if I think something about something or someone or a difference of opinion, like maybe I should think very carefully to myself if I want to project anything or not, you know? So, yeah, anyway, back to ramblings.
no, I just think that's just part of the journey. I mean, it's where you were. You have a different perspective. I think there's a beauty to being where we were too, and we gotta like learn to appreciate that. And again, I just go back to for yourself to be yourself. So early seasons of life, that's I do think the vast majority of people do the best that they can with what they're given. And as we get more perspective, as we gain more understanding into who and why we are, and have more, wisdom and maturity, then hopefully we apply that and navigate differently. And that's growth, right? Like that's progress, and I guess in a meaningful way. I think it's the person that doesn't evolve, that can't change, that can't shift, that can't go back and think critically about who and where they were, and then find a way to laugh about it, and forgive, really, like, you know, oftentimes you're like, bro, no shame, no shame, no shame, but then you get shame when you step up and you
Yeah.
do it, right? But not really, like no shame, just we're all figuring it out. And I think that's something too, by meditating on my own like anxiety and depression and different low seasons, like I'm not gonna hold that against anyone else where they are. Certainly I'm human, there's frustrations I'll encounter, but what I'm working on is putting it down, and that goes back to like, I think about it in the sense of my brother always saying, don't let anyone rob you of your joy. So whether that be their vibe that could be robbing you of the joy, or their attitude, or if they're attacking you, whatever, like at the end of the day, it's your joy. So no one can take that away from you. So if your joy is like being out there and being crazy, and if at one point, and you said it, like the bait, I mean, bro, that's an investment. You can sell that. So there you go.
I know,
It
I
wasn't it
thought
wasn't all
about
for
it.
a
I
loss,
thought about it.
or honestly, one day what I would like to do with things I've collected, I'd love to make an exhibit out of it and have everything for sale. And I've thought of different ways to like how to bring that to life. I've thought about it from the standpoint of like, wow, there's some pieces honestly that are probably like worth a lot, but what if you like put everything in a place and just gave it a flat fee of 100, or you give it a flat fee of like 20 or whatever, and then just let it go, like how liberating would that be? I hope it's that you're grabbing the
Well,
coolest,
actually, I forgot I had this,
shark
but
face
the other
hoodie.
day, this is a total rant into a different direction. But the other day, my wife and I were driving around by Atkinson over here, by Alawana,
Hmm.
and seen this guy walking down the street, and then he had a Sixers, he had a AI jersey on, and it was like the black and like gold colorway, the Philly 76ers back in like the early or like 2005 ish, around there. But anyway, he had that, and he had a hat to match it, and I was like, my wife was in the car, and I was like, that dude's jersey is sick. And she's like, who is it? I was like, it's Allen Iverson. And then like she was like, oh, it's like, yeah, that's like my favorite player of all time. And then we turned the corner. We made a couple turns, went around the block, and then came back. And I saw the guy again. I was like, dude, like I was about to roll the window down, and be like sick jersey, bro. But then I was telling her, I was like, yeah, I actually have this like Mitchell and Ness throwback jersey, which is this one right here.
There you go.
And that's in my closet of retired gear that I don't wear. The funny thing is, she's like, I don't know what size it is, because the jerseys back then were like 48, 44 or whatever. But this thing is like, it's probably like a triple X on me, dude. It's ridiculous. I used to wear this all the time.
So you know what? You got to throw it back and wear it again. I remember seeing this Reddit thread one time, and it was for Bape heads, and this guy was, because the thing that's interesting about Bape is trying to find sizing, right? So I was trying to figure out sizing, and I was looking at something. I ended up not making a purchase, but I was reading something, and somebody was saying like, honestly, I have a shitty day at work, but I go home and I throw on my Bape hoodie and I feel okay. And let's pause for there. Like, there's a lot of different things people can do to feel better. But is that really hurting somebody if like they put something on and it makes them feel better? Okay, yeah, you could argue, well, you spent X on this and whatever, but if that's what is that person's path to like feeling better and not going and hitting the bottle or hitting the pipe or hitting a person, then more
Yeah,
power to them, if that
agreed.
liberates somebody. So I think we gotta like move beyond this public shaming of people. I mean, as long as you're operating within ethical, moral realms, like life's hard. So just do you, and unfortunately, people are people. There's always going to be haters, but that's I think where it comes down to. Again, free yourself to be yourself, because if life is as short as I think it is, and that could mean you got 20 years, it could mean you got 105 years, but I guarantee you when you arrive at that endpoint, it's probably going to feel like it won't flew by. So you can't waste any time, and that's what I keep coming back to, is just like, man, the amount of time I've wasted in my head being afraid, um, being not allowing myself to just like be a loving person towards myself, towards other people. For why? That's time that's lost. So just trying to just do my best to live and love fully in each moment here on out.
Should we call it?
Yeah. So well, first I think it's time that you unretire some of your gear. It sounds like you got a whole bunch of stuff in
Uh,
there that's ready to like
well, I started
kind of
wearing. I got
fly.
this Beep Stussy collab hoodie that I started wearing again a little bit. Um, and
Oh, there
then
you go.
this other Bape hoodie I have, I've actually worn it on and off over the years, but it's funny how it went from like me wearing it because it's something that made me feel good when I wore it out, to now it's just something that keeps me warm when I need it to. So that's pretty funny. But yeah, some of it I just that's just not my style no more. I just don't dress that way, but I still have it. That was the thing about Bape though, was like
Yeah.
I never knew the sizing until I actually went to the physical store in Japan, and then I tried on the clothes, and I was like, I don't know if that was a good thing or a bad thing, because then from that moment on, I knew my size and everything, because like Japanese sizing
Yeah.
and European sizing tends to be different. I don't know if it's still the same way, but like even before Uniqlo came to the States, like Uniqlo was something that I looked forward to when I traveled to Asia. When I went to Hong Kong or I went to Japan, like that was the place where I go load up on
Mhm.
denims. Like, but then I always noticed that the sizing was not the same as when it came over here, or like sizing back in America or in the States. So, and then Uniqlo came here, and then I was excited, but then I was bummed because then I knew, us living on Oahu's, like everybody has the same stuff. So I was like, damn, now everybody's gonna have the stuff that I could only get in Asia before. Um, and now I hardly ever shop at Uniqlo. All the denims that I wear to this day, if you ever see me in a pair of jeans, I bought it from Uniqlo in either Hong Kong or Japan like 8 years ago, 7 years ago. That's how
Wow.
like old those jeans are, about how well they hold up. I love them; they're great. But I never see
Yeah.
those fits of jeans anymore. I can't find them over here. So, but luckily these still hold up.
I guess that
I
means you got
guess
to go back
so.
to
Yeah,
Asia.
I'm working on it. I'm working on
Yeah.
it. Yeah, yen's in a bad
Um,
spot, but I guess it's advantageous for us if we wanted to go over there. So I'll be snowboarding in Japan next year for sure.
there you go. Well, yeah, this was a great conversation. Again, I began with I just want to say thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to collaborate. I'm excited to kind of just keep the conversations going. I appreciate the friendship that has evolved as we've worked on different things and getting to know you over the years. And um, yeah, bro, thanks for being out there. It's super awesome. And if you haven't yet heard it, I think you should go take a listen and take a watch of Soulful featuring Dillon Pakele. Um, Shot by my friend here, Teves
Thank you,
Freitas.
bro. I guess one thing I'll just say is that I'm very grateful to that our paths crossed the way they have and have stayed in alignment. Um, it's not like I'm able to have insightful conversations with very many other people around me. So I appreciate it. And yeah, just super grateful, bro.
Yeah.
I'll
All
talk to
right,
you
bro.
soon, brother.
Shoots.
You have a great day. Bye, everybody.
All right.